Sonnet may be defined as a 14-line poem written in iambic pentameter and employing one of the set rhyme schemes and applying a tightly structured thematic organization. Means the sonnet is a poem of 14 lines which is written in a set pattern in a set meter. In comparison to other forms of writing poetry, sonnet writing is a challenging task. The challenge of writing a sonnet lies in the fact that a sonnet is to be written in the limited number of lines and in the prescribed metrical pattern. And the idea which is discussed in the sonnet has to be introduced, developed, and concluded within this limit in a systematic given structure. The system of rhyming is also according to fixed rules, and at the same time there are also laws for balancing of thought within the structure of the sonnet itself. An Italian poet, Petrarch, was the first poet to use this form of poetry, who used sonnet form to express his love for his beloved. This poetic form was borrowed by two English poets, Sir Thomas Yott and the Earl of Surrey, from the Italian models of the Petrarch. And these two poets introduced sonnet form in England in about the middle of the 16th century. Sir Thomas Yott introduced the Petrarchan Sonnet to England in the early 16th century. His famous translations of Petrarch's sonnets are modeled on the sonnet form. These translations of Sir Thomas Yott drew attention of the people towards this form of writing poetry. His contemporary Henry Howard, the Earl of Surrey, was the contemporary of Yott, and he modified a little bit the Petrarchan model, and in this way he established the structure that later on became popularly known as the Shakespearean sonnet. Now let us discuss the types of sonnets. Two sonnet forms provide the models from which all the other sonnets are formed. The two popular and broader categories of the sonnets are the Petrarchan sonnet and the Shakespearean sonnet. The first and the most common sonnet form is the Petrarchan model, which is also known as the Italian model of sonnet. This is named after one of its greatest practitioner, the Italian poet Petrarch. The Petrarchan sonnet is a little complex in style. It is divided into two parts, both by the system of rhyme scheme and by the movement of the thought. The first 8 lines of the Petrarchan sonnets are called the octave, and this octave is arranged in 2 quatrains with the rhyme scheme of ABBA and ABBA. The octave means the first 8 lines of the Petrarchan sonnet make a long movement which is broken only by a slight pause at the end of the fourth line. And this part, the octave part, contains main idea, main thought of the poem. The climax of the thought is reached with a clear pause at the end of the octave, at the end of the eighth line. Generally, the octave of a Petrarchan sonnet presents a conflict, a problem, or some complication which is solved in the later part, that is, the sestet. The sestet is a stanza of 6 lines which comes after octave. Octave are the first 8 lines of the Petrarchan sonnet, and the sestet is the second part, the later part of a Petrarchan sonnet. The sestet is subordinate to the octave because it contains the same subject of the octave but gradually closes the subject. The sestet is divided into 2 stanzas of 3 lines each, and it is normally called a tercet. The rhyme scheme of the sestet is CDC, CDC, and sometimes the rhyme scheme may also be changed into CD, CD, CD or CDE, CDE. Normal structure of Petrarchan sonnet discusses an argument, observation, question, or some other answerable charge in the octave part, and then there is a turn after the 8th line, after the octave. This turn makes a shift in the direction of the foregoing argument or the narrative, turning the sestet into the vehicle for the counter argument. And this sestet also acts in some poems as a kind of clarification or whatever answer the octave demands. The another form of the sonnet is known as the Shakespearean sonnet. Let us first see the example of a Petrarchan sonnet. Here is a poem by William Wordsworth. The title is London 1802, which is modeled on Petrarchan form of sonnet. Let's read the text. Milton, thou shouldest be living at this hour. England hath need of thee. She is a fen of stagnant waters, altar, sword, and pen. Fireside, the heroic wealth of hall and bower, have forfeited their ancient English dower. Of inward happiness, we are selfish men. Oh, raise us up, return to us again, and give us manners, virtue, freedom, power. See the rhyme scheme. A, B, B, A, and then A, B, B, A. This is the octave part of this kind of sonnet, Petrarchan sonnet. And there is the answer to the idea which is presented in the octave of this poem. The soul was like a star and dwelt apart. Thou hadst a voice whose sound was like the sea, pure as the naked heavens, majestic free. So didst thou travel on life's common way, in cheerful godliness, and yet thy heart the lowliest duties on herself did lay. The rhyme scheme of the sestet part means the last 6 line is C, D, D and E, C, E. So this is the normal structure of a Petrarchan sonnet, which is divided into octave and a sestet. Another form of the sonnet is a Shakespearean sonnet. The Shakespearean sonnet is also called the English sonnet. It is called the the Shakespearean sonnet, not because Shakespeare himself invented this form. It is called Shakespearean because Shakespeare's sonnets are the best examples of this type of sonnet. Out of these two, the Shakespearean form of sonnet is the simpler of the two in construction and also in arrangement of thoughts. A Shakespearean sonnet consists of 3 quatrains with a couple at the end. The 3 quatrains means a quatrain is a stanza of 4 lines. So the 3 quatrains are generally of equal importance. There is no necessary pause in the movement until the final couplet is reached. The couplet is the climax of the thought of the poem, which is normally in an epigrammatic form. The rhyme scheme of a Shakespearean sonnet is ABAB, CDCD, EFEF, and GG. The couplet, which are the last 2 lines, plays a very important role. Generally, a couplet in this kind of sonnet arrives in the form of a conclusion or an amplification or even discarding or refutation of the previous 3 stanzas, often creating an epiphanic quality to the end. Here is an example from William Shakespeare's collection of poems, collection of sonnets. It is sonnet number 130, which is entitled, "Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer's Day?" In this poem, William Shakespeare compares his mistress with some nature's beauties, but the concluding couplet changes the whole idea in a surprising direction. The rhyme scheme of this form of sonnet may be seen as A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, then E, F, E, F, and lastly there is a couplet G, G. Apart from these two popular kinds of sonnets, there are many forms of sonnets that we have observed which appear to be a little variation from these two popular forms of sonnets. The first variation that is very popular in the sonnet form is the Miltonic form of sonnet. John Milton used Italian form of sonnet for writing his sonnets, and he added several important refinement to sonnet writing. Milton, freed the sonnet from its typical incarnation in a sequence of sonnets. Sonnets were earlier written in the form of sequences on a limited subjects, and Milton made it free from this narrow scope of sonnet writing, and he started writing the occasional sonnets. These occasional sonnets were personal, autobiographical, and often expressed interior or self-directed concerns of the poet. Milton also took liberties with the turn that he allowed the octave to run into the sestet as per his requirement, and both of the qualities that we have discussed in this variation can be seen in his very popular poem, "When I Consider How My Light is Spent." Let's read the example. "When I consider how my light is spent, ere half my days in this dark world and wide, and that one talent which is death to hide, lodged with me useless, though my soul more bent, to serve therewith my Maker and present my true account, lest he returning chide. Doth God exact day labor light denied? I fondly ask. But patience to prevent that murmur soon replies, God doth not need either man's work or his own gifts. Who best bear his mild yoke, they serve him best. His state is kingly, thousands at his bidding speed, and post over land and ocean without rest. They also serve who only stand and wait. In this sonnet, Milton has used the Petrarchan model of or Italian model of writing sonnet, but he has used this sonnet form for writing some of the autobiographical ideas related to his personal life, and also he has allowed the octave to intervene or enter into the sestet part. So this kind of variations may be observed in the sonnet form in English literature. Let's see another popular variation. This variation was done by a very important poet, Spenser. The Spenserian sonnet was invented by a very famous 16th century English poet, Edmund Spenser. He basically took his structure from the Shakespearean model of writing a sonnet, that is 3 quatrains and a couplet. But the special feature of a Spenserian sonnet is that he employs a series of couplet links between quatrains. Means the quatrains are linked with one another as revealed in the rhyme scheme ABAB, BCBC, CDCD, EE. So there is a interconnection of stanzas, quatrains. The Spenserian sonnet, through the interweaving of the quatrains, implicitly reorganizes the Shakespearean sonnet into couplets, and it reminds us the Petrarchan form also is some. So Spenserian sonnet is a kind of fusion between the Shakespearean and the Petrarchan sonnet. Let's see some of the popular examples of sonnet in English literature. Here is an example which was written by a very famous romantic poet, P.B. Shelley. This is a sonnet entitled Ozymandias. He writes, I met a traveller from an antique land who said, 2 vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert, near them on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read, which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed, and on the pedestal these words appear, my name is Ozymandias, King of Kings, look on my works, ye mighty and despair, nothing beside remains, around the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. So this example is an evidence that sonnet was also popular after the Elizabethan period, even up till the Romantic period. There is another very famous popular example of sonnets in the Romantic period by the poet William Wordsworth. The title of the poem is The World is Too Much with Us. William Wordsworth applied Petrarchan form of sonnet writing. Although the poem was written in 19th century, means early 19th century, and William Wordsworth modeled his most of the sonnets after the Milton's style, John Milton's style, and Milton's style, which was also based on the Petrarchan mode of writing. So there are numerous examples of sonnet writing in 19th century in the following periods. So this was all about discussion of sonnets, their structure, their kinds, and their examples in English literature. Thank you.